Good morning, and thank you for joining this special Justice in Every Breath conversation. I'm Stephanie Reese, Director of Strategic Implementation and Justice with Moms Clean Air Force, and I'm so excited to be here with you all today. We're focusing on an issue that touches every family, why teaching our children about their environment is important to protecting their health and building stronger, cleaner communities together. We know that in some places, science and climate education are under threat or being questioned. But what we also know is that parents, educators, and advocates in these communities are committed to making sure every child has the knowledge, the opportunity, and the right to breathe clean air and thrive. So that is why I am very excited to be joined by someone who knows a lot about environmental education and truly inspires me, Kim Noble. Kim, before we dive in, would you share a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, good morning, and thank you so much, Stevie. I'm honored and humbled that you would say I know so much about environmental education. But, I have to say the work that Moms Clean Air Force is doing, lifting up moms and caregivers and communities, it's really so important. So I want to say thank you for what you do. As you mentioned, I'm Kim Noble. I've been in environmental advocacy for well over a decade, working with nonprofit organizations and the federal government. And, I'm proud to have served in operations and partnerships roles for Green for All and then Green the Church, working to address the intersection of Black faith and environmentalism. And it really taught me that communities are at the heart of what we do. For the past 3 years, I've worked at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, in public engagement and environmental education. And I really was so excited to be a part of the team that launched EPA's National Environmental Museum and Education Center, as well as the new youth and also the HBCU Federal Advisory Committees. But, more than the titles or the roles, my work has really been about helping communities have the tools and the resources they need to make meaningful change. This is especially true for our younger generations. And so really this conversation is close to my heart. And I'm grateful to sit down with you today to talk about why teaching our kids about the environment matters now more than ever.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kim. Honestly, it is clear how deeply connected you are to this work. And I'm just so looking forward to this conversation. So let's dive right in, starting with the heart of today's theme, justice in every breath, which is one of Mom's Clean Air Force's core beliefs. Um, I'm interested to know, Kim, what that phrase, justice in every breath, means to you.
Mm. Well, first of all, I love that phrase, justice in every breath. For me, it's really simple. It means clean air, clean air for everyone, air free of pollution, toxics. It's the air that we feel safe to have our kids and our grandkids breathe. It means supporting and helping communities who have been dealing with air pollution for years. And it means ensuring that changes are sustainable and maintained for generations to come. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I really agree. And what you shared is so important. Building on that, environmental education is so powerful. Why do you believe that environmental education is important for our children?
Hmm. Well, Stevie, I'm a Georgia native, and I just came back from visiting my mom this past week. But I'm also still missing my father. He's now passed away, and he was very much a wise soul. I remember when I was a little girl sitting on outside on the front porch with him, and he'd take a deep breath, and then he said, "I can smell the rain. It's coming." And I'm like, "What? Really? It's kind of sunny right now." But sure enough, in a few minutes, the clouds rolled in and then came the downpour. As you can imagine, Stevie, I was amazed. As a little kid, wow, my dad can do that. But he'd also look at the animals and he'd watch what they were doing. And he said, look, watch, they're preparing for something. Look at the birds, they're flocking somewhere. Where do you think they're going and why? We noticed the weather and the animals and the patterns, and we talk about how it made us feel. We never called it environmental education, but that's really what it was, paying attention and building a relationship with the world around us. That's what we did. And I think that's so important for our kids today. It starts with the simple habit of just noticing, paying attention. My dad taught me to look and to watch what's going on in my environment. And when you start to pay attention, you realize three important things. The environment, it affects us all. And sometimes those effects are good and sometimes they're bad. And when they're bad, we have to do something about it. And once we know we have to act, environmental education, it gives us the tools and the skills to make informed decisions about our own communities. And it allows us to take responsible action. Another way to put it is environmental education is what lets us understand why things are changing, how they're changing, and what we can do about it. And, honestly, I think that's the best gift that we can give our kids.
It sounds like your father may have played such a big part in what makes you so passionate about the environment, and all the perspectives that you shared. They're so important, Kim. And of course, education is just one part of the picture, right? Because even as we teach our kids, they're also navigating, very real health challenges every single day.
Yeah.
So, Kim, knowing that children are facing these unique challenges, what do you see as some of the biggest environmental health issues impacting them right now?
Mm. Well, Stevie, let's be clear. We're facing new and scary environmental health challenges every single day. And they affect all of us, but they put our most vulnerable, including our kids, at real risk. But here's the thing. We often only focus on the big challenges and then we get stuck. And don't get me wrong, no one can deny all of the heartbreaking images of flooding in Central Texas or the wildfires in California. Events like these are devastating, a gut punch, and they can change lives in seconds. So we absolutely need big solutions to address these big problems. But I also want to say that big solutions start with small steps. It starts with noticing the challenges right in our own neighborhoods. When I worked at EPA, one of the projects we are really proud of was our clean school bus program. And I remember when I was a kid, when the bus was coming, we knew it was coming because we heard the sound of the loud engine roaring around the corner. We also knew that we needed to hightail it to the bus stop right away so we didn't miss the bus. But what I later learned is that noise was a diesel engine polluting the air and putting kids' lives and health at risk. So EPA's Clean School Bus program, it really tackled that overlooked problem of high asthma rates among kids riding diesel school buses every day. And through grants and funding, EPA helped schools across the country transition to zero emission clean buses. It took a clear environmental health problem, polluted air from diesel buses, and it offered a clear solution with real nationwide impact. There are so many environmental health challenges like this, from air pollution to unreliable water quality to climate disasters to rising sea levels. Even in DC, we've seen dangerous flooding lately, and that's largely a result of increased moisture in the area from the warming of our waters. We're not exempt. These challenges require an all hands on deck approach. It starts with parents, neighborhoods, churches, and communities, all working together to make a difference.
Absolutely. I'm shaking my head because everything you've said, you have really highlighted so many important issues, Kim, that our children are dealing with And as a mom, I can tell you it isn't easy, you know, one when you can't let your kids outside, but also, as you mentioned, you know, there are issues with the buses, watching them go onto the buses and the plumes of smoke are going into the air. That has been around since I was a child as well, getting on a school bus. So, um, and that actually brings me to my next question before I go off topic there. As a parent, and for other parents and caregivers who play such a critical role, can you speak to how parents can advocate for cleaner air and healthier environments for their kids?
Yeah, absolutely, Stevie. I'm really glad you asked this question because, it's a reminder, when we face the kind of challenges like I mentioned before, we also face an opportunity to create change in our communities. So, as parents, grandparents, and caregivers, we have to advocate for our kids. We have to use our voices to highlight the issues that they face every day. Whether it's from air pollution from school buses or lead pipes, affecting drinking water at home. Change begins with just a few concerned parents, folks who do their research and commit to building a better future for their kids. I think it's really that simple. But it's also important to remember that as much as parents and caregivers need to be advocates, I really have to say that our younger generations, they're already sounding the alarm and grabbing the attention of people in power. You know that from the work that you do. These kids, they've been doing the work. They're 5 steps ahead of us already. And part of our role is simply to listen to them. I remember the stories that I heard over the years from kids from Flint, Michigan, fighting for clean and safe drinking water, to kids who live near power plants, fighting for stronger regulations. Um, these are the stories that stick with you. And they know what's wrong and they're working to fix it. And honestly, they don't have a choice because it's their future that's at stake. So, one of the best examples of this is EPA's National Environmental Youth Advisory Council. I was honored to be a part of that team that helped to launch that first of its kind federal advisory committee where youth ages 16 to 29 directly advised EPA's leadership. These young people, I have to say, they're nothing short of amazing. They're leading initiatives in their communities. They're improving waste management. They're embedding traditional ecological knowledge into conservation work. They're even using their social media platforms to bring about change. All this and so much more. To me, they're shining examples of what environmental education can do. So I'd say that our task as parents, grandparents, and caregivers, and yes, older generations more broadly, is to listen to these young people who are already leading. We need to support them and fill in the gaps where they need us.
That was so well said, Kim. And honestly, I was taking notes as you were sharing. There are so many great takeaways, and just the breadth of work that you have that you have been involved in is just so inspiring. So it's not just parents, caregivers, or families, as you noted, who play an important role. And we may have discussed this on another occasion when it comes to child's upbringing, right? Beyond parents, we know and some organizations have so much potential to make an impact. So how can these schools and local organizations work together to promote environmental education, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think this work falls on all of us. But, as you said, schools and local organizations, they have real power and resources to make an even bigger impact. Simply put, schools and local groups need to partner up. They need to team up so that kids can learn about their own neighborhoods and meet the people doing the important work around them. When we make climate issues tangible and local, this ignites something in our kids. They start to understand how much their environment affects them every day. And schools can build on that awareness by giving them, real ways to take action. This reminds me of Krista Brinchick. She is a third grade educator from Raleigh, North Carolina. She does this with her students. Her elementary school is located across the street from a former landfill. And Krista uses this as a discussion point when teaching about environmental impacts of landfills and waste management. So astute. Her lessons really led to a partnership with the Environmental Research and Education Foundation. And they were able to perform a waste analysis in their school cafeteria, which then informed a school-wide waste reduction plan. I mean, I think this is really cool because Krista is not only an amazing educator, but she's also helping students to really connect the dots. I got a chance to meet Krista during our annual Presidential Environmental Education Award ceremony. EPA holds this event every year to celebrate students and educators from across the country, working together to make a difference in their classrooms and their communities. Our Presidential Innovation Award for Environmental Educators, that's what Krista is highlighting outstanding kindergarten through 12th grade teachers who make environmental education creative and compelling for their students. And then there was the Youth Award program, our President's Environmental Youth Award PIA winners. These are K through 12th grade students from across the country as well. And, they've demonstrated outstanding environmental stewardship. These students were doing amazing work like cleaning up waterways, planting trees, tackling food waste in school cafeterias, and believe me, so much more. So you can, folks can check that out on EPA's website. But, I just would say, I got a chance to spend time with our winners while I worked there, and each of them was more incredible than the next. I mean, my mind was blown every time I talk with them. They're so thoughtful and smart people dedicated to making our planet a better place. But I also want to mention the North American Association for Environmental Education, also known as NAAEE, and the National Environmental Education Foundation, or NEEF. Some good friends over there. They're doing amazing work, not to just support educators, local groups and schools, but they're also creating networks that share best practices and resources to help multiply everyone's efforts. So ultimately, I believe the role of all of these institutions and organizations is to make it easier for kids to learn about environmental education and really take action together.
Well, exactly. I'm just taking that in, Kim. When you hear stories of people that are impacted in real life and use that as an opportunity to propel themselves and make a difference, that is that is just amazing to hear so many people doing that and in this space, and the organizations that are putting resources available to help make it easier for them to do just that, make a change. And so thank you for sharing those stories. And I will definitely check out those resources that you shared, and also go to the EPA website, as you mentioned, to read more about these stories. I know we're getting close to time. So just to zoom out for a quick moment, thinking about the bigger picture and what's at stake here, in your opinion, Kim, what are the long-term impacts if we don't act?
Yeah, as a mother and a grandmother, I actually think about this all the time. I mean, I really do. There's so much at stake here. In the immediate sense, when we're unprepared for climate emergencies, the results can be deadly for entire communities, as I mentioned earlier. In the long run, the future of our planet and the future of our young generations depends on whether we equip them to lead this work. And if we don't teach them about climate change, they'll inherit a hotter, more dangerous world with no idea how to fix it. They'll have to face the consequences without the tools they need. And honestly, that's not right, and it's not fair. So environmental education helps us to ask the right questions before it's too late. Education is power. It helps us to plan, adapt, and to stay safe. So what's really at stake is the ability to make choices that protect the people and places that we love. When we have less information, we make worse choices without considering all of the factors or the people affected. And that leaves our most vulnerable communities behind. And sometimes that's our kids. Yeah. So if we don't invest in them now, we're all going to pay for it later. Our only chance at building a resilient and sustainable future depends on whether we're ready for the changes ahead. So we owe it to our babies and our grandbabies to leave them a planet they can live on. And that starts with what we teach them today.
Well, that's powerful, Kim. It reminds me of that saying, you don't know what you don't know, and really underscores why this work matters so much. But I also know, within the scope of stakes at hand, or that are the potential stakes that could happen. I know that you're someone who also leads with hope and optimism. And so, stepping away from what's at stake, I'm so interested to hear what gives you hope about the future for our children.
Hmm. Stevie, I want my kids and my grandkids, this young generation and the next generation and generations to come to have a bright future on a healthy planet. That's why I've dedicated myself to this work. I've worked in environmental education and advocacy for decades now. And like some of the stories that I've shared with you today, I've had the privilege of meeting with kids and leaders across the country doing the important work in their communities. And let me tell you, I know our future is in good hands. These are critical thinkers. When I got a chance to do tours at the museum, they asked, thought-provoking questions, but they also shared amazing and thoughtful answers and solutions. I could share so many stories, like kids starting community gardens to improve local food security, or students in Texas and New York organizing hydroponics projects to feed their schools. I could tell you about all this and so much more. But what it all means is this: for every problem or challenge we're facing, there are countless people in communities nationwide brainstorming and implementing solutions to these problems every single day. And these solutions, they will endure, and so will we. I have so much hope.
Fantastic. And as you were saying, our children are so amazing. And for anyone who wants to get their child involved and is concerned that they're too young, our children nowadays can do anything that we put in front of them. So I love how you shared all the experiences and things that you've seen our young people doing. Um, I know we are getting close to time, or I guess we're at time. It's just flown by. Goodness gracious. Do I have time for one more quick question, Kim? And this is really just about community members and watching how and helping them figure out what they can do to get involved. What message would you like to share with them? Where can they start?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say, start by asking yourself, who am I fighting for? And what do I want for them? And let these answers to these questions be your North Star. That's what I've done. Don't be intimidated. Like I said, solutions start with small steps. Talk to your community, reach out and read up, pay attention, educate yourselves. If you see any sort of problem in your community, find a group that's working on it and start volunteering with them and connecting with them. And if there isn't one, start your own. Go to a local government or school board meeting and start the conversation. Be in the room where it happens. But most importantly, commit yourself to the cause. Speak up and show up. What's cool is that anyone committed to building coalitions and creating sustainable change, reimagining solutions, can be a part of the environmental movement. So I would say keep pushing until something changes.
Kim, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your passion, your heart with us today. Goodness gracious, I tell you every single time we talk, I really am inspired every time I speak with you.
Mhm.
I feel so light and hopeful and just appreciative of this time. And being able to sit in this space with you and talk about how much justice in every breath matters, and that at the end of the day, it's about clean air, safe communities, and giving our children and every child that chance to learn and thrive. And so, to everyone watching, I encourage you, as Kim was just sharing, to stay active, keep learning, speak up for cleaner air, and get involved. If you don't know where to start, reach out to Moms Clean Air Force at momscleanairforce.org. We have resources and actions ready for you. And thank you again so much for spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.